Greetings and good day. This is Donnie with TechWinner, and thank you so much for joining me today. Well, guys, I just want to give you an update on some of the smart lighting that I've been able to implement in my house. So without any further ado, let's dive in and let's take a look. So guys, if you've been watching the channel for a while, you've seen a couple of updates around smart lighting, specifically using like smart bulbs, smart plugs, but now also leveraging some of the Lutron Caseta smart switches in my home as well. Yes, I've done an install here in my office, and I also have this great Pico remote that I have tied into the light that's over my head. And one of the things that I've been working on is getting that to be integrated with other tools. Yes, not just like Alexa, but I've actually been leveraging here a platform called Samsung Smartthings. One that I really stayed away from for a really long time because at least back in the day, you had to have a specific SmartThings hub for things to talk. That is no longer the case. So I've been testing it out, and I've actually got some great automations happening in my office now to where with that Pico, if I go and turn off the lights, the accent lights behind me turn off as well. So then just kind of pressing that on, the overhead light comes on, the accent lights, which are running off of TP-Link Casa smart plugs, actually turn on and off as well based off of that. So essentially what happens is Lutron has an event. You're telling it to turn lights off, turn the lights on, dim them to a certain level. That lets Samsung Smartthings know that something's happened, and then they can create an event based off of that. So essentially Lutron turns the lights on, tells SmartThings about it, and then SmartThings tells TP-Link Casa about the plugs. Complicated? Not really as much as you would think. The Samsung SmartThings app makes it very easy to set up these routines, and it's very robust in the way that it can allow an event from one product to trigger an event with another product as well. So this had me start thinking, what else can I do to add some value in some other areas of my house as well? So one of the things that I have in my living room is 5 lamps that are set up, and it's a large room, but it's got 5 Lifx bulbs in them, fully dimmable, super convenient, and really oftentimes just use voice control to turn those on or off by asking Alexa to do it for us. But I would love to be able to have the simplicity of pushing a button on the wall in that room and turning all of those lamps on or off at any given time. So I started going down the path of just thinking through how could I make this work? And I love the just design language of these Lutron Caseta switches. My one complaint, by the way, just kind of looking at another install I did here recently, along with like my staircase, basically using them as like a 3-way switch. I had a Lutron Caseta smart switch, and then at the top, rather than putting in a second smart switch, the way that at least that generation of Lutron Caseta works, you basically put a Pico remote into where that other switch would be. And then basically everything talks like it's supposed to. The wiring is a little bit complex with that. I might talk about that project in detail just in another video in the future, but it really is straightforward, but it's kind of weird. You just have a remote that takes the place of one of those wall light switches. So as I'm now adding these throughout more places in the house, I do like that design language and the consistency of having those wall switches that all look the same. The one nitpick I have here is the Caseta switches themselves, and the Picos have one subtle difference, and that is that button that's in the middle. The Pico has that button. It basically will put the lights at 50%. So like even if I push it in my office, it dims that overhead light down to 50. You go back to that on button, it puts it back to 100%. Off turns it off like you would expect it to. And then that 50 kind of puts it back. And then you can kind of dim up and down based on wherever you want that level to specifically be. So kind of unusual. I wish they would have that consistent across the board, but I like the simplicity of having these strategically located throughout the house. So that had me start thinking down the path about these Lifx bulbs. Is there a way for me to tie them in to where I have a Pico remote that I press, and then Lutron informs Samsung SmartThings about that event, and then tells the Lifx bulbs to do whatever they need to do? So there's a couple of different ways you can go about doing this. One of them is incredibly complex, and I won't talk about it on here, but there is some scripting that you could do to make this all work. But being a TechWinner, I'm not expecting you guys to have that advanced level of expertise. I want this to happen in a way that would be very practical, that'd be very easy to replicate without you having to be some sort of coding ninja. So I found a product by Lutron called the Lutron Caseta lamp dimmer switch. Yes, this is just a product that is basically you plug into the wall, and then it's got 2 plugs on each side of it, and you can essentially plug in lamps off of it. Well, I don't want to get like 5 of these things to control 5 different lamps across the room, but it would be nice to be able to use one of these with a Pico remote, and then basically that Pico remote send those advanced notifications to Samsung Smartthings and on then to the Lifx bulbs. Are you keeping up so far? It's not as complex as it sounds. So basically, I was reading through a couple of forums and I saw where other people had done this, and I was really encouraged by what I had read. Basically, you have this smart plug. You can plug it in anywhere in your house. It doesn't even need to be plugged into anything. But because it's reading commands from a Pico remote, it totally checks out. Lutron says it's good. Smartthings sees that something's happening, and it will allow routines to happen to third-party apps. So I went to eBay and I found a Lutron smart lamp dimmer switch and got one of these, got with the Pico remote that came along with it for 40 bucks and tested this thing out. And sure enough, guys, this thing actually does work. So I will tell you, it takes a little bit of time in the Smartthings app to get this all set up. So just kind of walking through that and showing you here in the app, I have a whole bunch of routines that I built for this. One that is turning it on, which basically means from a Lutron perspective that dimming setting is anywhere between 90 and 100%. Basically, it's going to put those Lifx bulbs at 100%. Off means off. So as long as it's at 0%, it's going to turn all of those 5 Lifx bulbs off completely. And then basically I just built different routines based on 10 percentage points increments. So basically from 1 to 10% would mean the Lifx bulb would be set to 5%. And then of course, as you can see here, 11 to 20 means 15, and so on and so forth, all the way up to basically that threshold of 80 to 89%, meaning that the Lifx bulb should be at 85% brightness. So whatever that Lutron setting is, whatever that increment looks like, I've got a Lifx bulb comparison that is going to be very comparable. So testing this out, and as you can see here, just working in the room from the corner of it with this Pico remote, guys, this absolutely 100% works. And it's not as complex once you get past that initial setup as you would think. And it just totally works, you guys. So then just kind of looking through that installation here of actually putting these Pico remotes on the wall, they've got a couple of different products here that you can see. One of them I'll show you is this wall plate bracket. And essentially this wall plate bracket you can slide the Pico remote into. And then you've got these Claro wall plates that Lutron also makes as well. These are fantastic. I'm putting one of these in a position on the wall where there is no plate whatsoever. The other one's going to go next to a ceiling fan control that's in the room. And yes, this little remote control, as you can see here, also came with the house. So yeah, it's here. But I want to make this nice and clean and consistent. So I'm replacing what was like just this basic light switch with one that at least is that same shape, that rectangular shape as what you would see with any of the Lutron Caseta products. It's just still a dumb switch, but I really just need it to stay on all the time because that remote is handling that ceiling fan. And I want to be able to put that other Pico remote next to it. So I'm also going to install here, as you can see, this Claro 2-gang switch. And guys, just looking at this finished product of installing both of these remotes, now basically 2 of the main passageways into this room, you can just push a button on the wall and all those lamps turn on or off, or to any dimmable settings that you would like. So now, not only do we have the ability to use ALEXA voice commands to turn these on or off, or to whatever dimmable position, or even pull out your phone and use a Lifx app and kind of drill down into it and set that on and off, or whatever dimmable setting you want, you can just push a button on the wall in the room. Anybody can do that. So guys, as we continue down this path, I like being able to not just have those voice commands, but have that actual tactile control in the room to do this. And that consistency that I'm getting from the Lutron Caseta products, absolutely fantastic. I am totally thrilled with this project. And huge kudos to Samsung Smartthings as acting as that in-between, which by the way, completely free. and it sends those commands from Lutron onto Lifx and makes all of this possible. And guys, I want to tell you, it's really not as complicated as it may sound on the front end. Adding those routines in the Samsung Smartthings was completely the way to go here. It is kind of busy work, especially with how granular I made it. You may not want to do that. On and off might be good enough for you, but I liked having those additional settings for those dimming controls, and so far, so good. No complaints. If you've gone through some of these smart lighting projects like this yourselves, I'd love to hear about that in the comments. Any tips and tricks that you have for me, maybe they'll end up in a future video as well. And thank you so much for joining me. If you haven't already, I'd ask you to consider liking and subscribing and hitting that bell notification so that you're always staying up to date with new content as it's uploaded. But for now, I'm Donnie with TechWinner, helping you make winning decisions with your tech. You guys have a great day.